Hello, this is Kathryn and this is another episode of the Time Bender's Toolbox podcast. Welcome back. Today I wanted to ask you a question to start off, and then followed by a bit of discussion about, did you know that you're having a relationship with two different kinds of time all the time? Physical time and psychological time. And while these two overlap, they do have some marked differences. And I want to let you know, before I begin this discussion, that you can change your relationship with psychological time, and that will significantly impact how you are sensing physical time. And when you learn how to do this, you start feeling a greater sense of peace, empowerment, even freedom. So what's the difference between these two kinds of time? So we have physical time, which exists when there is motion and a measurement of movement between two or more objects or different states of reality. Like, for instance, the movement of the Earth around the sun. Say, in what we measure as a day, a revolution of the Earth around the sun, to be a day. That's calendar time, that's clock time, that's physical time. We call this linear time, and it exists, if you were to see this on an axis, when I talk about these two things, physical and psychological time. You could think of physical time as being on, let's just say, a horizontal continuum, what we think of as linear time, right? Thinking of it as a straight, continuous line that's marked by past, present, and future events. This is how most people think about time. Yet this is a very limited definition of this construct of time, but it is one that we create value and meaning in our life here in this 3D time-space reality for ourselves as humans. And this is just one fragment of consciousness. Everything is a fragment of consciousness that includes the construct of time. You are a fragment of consciousness. The earbuds that you have in your ears as you're listening to this podcast is a fragment of consciousness. The construct of time is a fragment of consciousness. And this is just one way that this construct of time is being expressed as a fragment of consciousness. There is another way, and it is psychological time. This is our sense or experience of time, which is completely subjective, based on our unique vantage point of perception. This version of time is extremely elastic, malleable, and variable. It is the sense of the eternal now moment, existing on a vertical continuum. Like physical time exists on a horizontal continuum, think of it as an x-axis. And the eternal now moment is a vertical continuum. You could also think of it as space and the ever-expansiveness, the infinite, unending nature of space. That's on a y-axis, a vertical continuum. It exists as pure potential, pure possibility, a never-ending void of endless probabilities that can be activated simply by the act of your will to do so, by the act of even your observation of it. And so when you shift into the awareness, let's just say, of your higher self, you call forth this shift in awareness. You're never not connected to your higher self, but you can call in a certain level of attention and focus to being in the manifestation of, or in the avatar of, let's just say, your higher self. And it's very quick. You can actually do it right now. Just simply call in as you kind of bring yourself very present, get into the moment, feel where you are in time and space, look around at the room you're in, get a sense of where you are in physical space, feel the temperature of the room that you're in on your skin. In other words, become very present and very tuned in to where you are now. And then simply say, higher self, higher self, higher self. Simply by shifting your awareness in this way, becoming hyper-present, you can access a higher dimensional translation of time, working with the psychological aspect of time that transcends the limited perception and the vibration or the frequency of the ego self. And here is where you really get to play and experiment with psychological time. Here is where in your higher self avatar awareness, you can play with bending time, compressing time, stretching time, collapsing timelines that are not aligned with, let's just say, your highest desires and intentions for being. You can jump timelines that are from your now dominant timeline, meaning the timeline that you're in that you are giving the most attention, focus, and awareness to. You can jump that to an alternate, maybe even more desirable timeline. You can merge timelines that are complementary to this highest and best, most desired timeline. You can do all these things, but not in the vantage point of the ego self, where the ego self is clocking time, clocking physical time, fragmenting the self even more by ticking off seconds, moments, hours, days, weeks, months, years, decades. We tend to fragment our consciousness. We fragment ourselves as a mechanism of consciousness when we are observing purely physical time and not calling in kind of that graceful folding in of or overlapping of psychological time, where we can impose our will upon it in a way where we can make psychological time impact the fabric of physical time by having entirely different intentions for being, having greater desires and becoming aware of them as maybe a simulation of events that we think of as a parallel reality, a parallel timeline. You could call it something you fantasize about in your day, a better life for yourself, a better situation, a perfect outcome for something you happen to be struggling with at the moment. This is all the basis for, the foundation of, forming a parallel reality or alternate timeline that you can jump. But not if you're purely in the ego self avatar of you. That's the avatar of you that is confined to the more rigid construct. It feels like a fixed and static reality that is the 3D time-space bubble. But when you access the awareness of the higher self, you access a higher dimensional translation of psychological time that transcends this limited perception and vibration of the ego self. You can do a lot with this space. You can do a lot with this very malleable, elastic, alchemical nature of time in this aspect of who you are. And from this elevated vantage point, you can also view false timelines that are not part of the organic universal time matrix and are not aligned for your or humanity's highest and best good. And then you can, in the avatar of your higher self, collapse them. Collapse those timelines. False timelines are artificial machinery, using our own kind of 3D construct of linear space-time. There are false timelines, artificial machinery, that are creating realities for humanity that are not aligned with our highest and best good, not aligned with your highest and best good. And you become more aware of these when you learn how to access the higher self and play with psychological time. You can change the fabric of linear physical time when you learn how to play with time on a psychological level, activating different potential timelines, parallel realities, that are aligned with your highest and best good, with the highest and best good of all, and with the least amount of resistance for all involved. Those three things are the magic sauce that makes working with timeline healing and time bending so powerful, so profound. And that is what I call the God choice. Working with timelines, becoming a time bender and a timeline healer. What you're doing is always working with this foundational belief that you are working with the highest and best good intention for you, the highest and best good of all, and with the least amount of resistance for all involved. That's what it means to truly become a timeline healer and a time bender, and it also allows you to, this magic recipe, change the fabric of linear physical time. This is what I teach in Timelines Expanded Masterclass. But this is also, just a taste of what I teach in Timelines Expanded Masterclass. There is so much more to uncover here. When we are experiencing our lives day to day, we're in our daily routines. We are all, kind of enslaved to sometimes, to the point of such habituation. Our daily schedule, our routine. We feel like we're off if something in our routine gets, pushed around or rescheduled. And we like routine. We like to be organized. We like cataloging and compartmentalizing things, and sometimes to our own detriment. That includes ourselves. And this is something held in place, this routine, this observance, almost to the point where we don't even think about it more. This observance of clock time, calendar time, and being in this constant place of feeling like we're slaves to this time. Like time is a consequence of this life. But in fact, time is just a construct that creates consequences. Time itself is not a consequence. Time creates consequences. And that feels even a little bit more flexible just hearing it like that. But what we think of as the 3D time-space vortex is really this reality bubble. It's like a frequency container on the Earth's grid that keeps us very habituated, almost in a slave-like kind of way sometimes, to routine, to observing clock and calendar time, ticking off seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, etc. And this really confines us to this powerful matrix or vortex. And it's particularly powerful because it has given us, yes, the foundation for creating, let's just say, meaning and value that we crave from, let's just say, the routine, the habituation of being human. It's part of our human tendency towards stabilization. We love stabilization as human beings. We love security. We love support. We love stability. We love constancy. However, being in this 3D time-space vortex, sorry, I can't speak today, and being confined to this rigid, seemingly fixed bubble of reality, yes, we have the stabilization that we crave, but why do we crave that so much? Why do we crave that level of comfort, that familiarity, the known, when at the same time having this stabilization, it actually causes ideas and opinions and beliefs, attitudes, even our own imagination and creativity to become cemented into this frequency container of 3D time-space, where we're constantly physically observing clock time, and we ultimately stagnate. This isn't always true, but this is our tendency, our human tendency towards stabilization. This is the crux of that. This is the con to the pro of, feeling stability and security. The con of that is really this kind of further fragmentation and also kind of a stagnation. And when we do that, and we tend to stagnate, we have a fragmentation of self inside this, let's just say, holographic vortex of the 3D time-space reality. It keeps projecting the same realities over and over again. Keeps reflecting a limited spectrum or bandwidth of frequency back to us on a closed loop. Because what's happening in time as a whole, but especially on a very finite scale within the 3D time-space matrix, we have realities folding over on themselves, almost like a burrito. One reality finishing and then rolling over and touching upon the next layer of reality and then folding over again and folding over again. And this tends to project a certain stagnation in the sense that they're the same limited experiences being reflected, redirected back and forth through this holographic vortex over and over and over again. Collective human consciousness ideas tend to stagnate because of this. Belief systems tend to stagnate as a result of being inside this kind of redirected, constantly reflecting stagnation of ideas, beliefs, etc. inside this holographic vortex of 3D time-space. This is detrimental to our human evolution and our spiritual growth process going forward, because it dominates our behavior and keeps us from assimilating new ideas, new attitudes, new information, and new possibilities. So here in the midst of all of this, and certainly with the people that I work with, the people that I think of as part of my bubble of reality, I guess you could say, there are many people asking to break through to the other side of their consciousness, to break through their current perspective that seems pretty finite and fixed, to crack the egg of their perception wide open and to liberate themselves from what has been and what continues to be. But here's the rub. If you are asking for this level of liberation from the reality bubble that you are in, it's imperative to recognize and accept that being hooked into mass consciousness that is confined to the bandwidth of energy known as 3D time-space, it's keeping you from rerouting your awareness to an elevated station of ascension, of ascended consciousness. So what if this kind of lower hub of, let's just say, that level of awareness where we crave stabilization, we crave the familiar, we crave the known, which is essentially a survival level consciousness at the level of the reptilian brain, which is programmed in our brain over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. What if the lower hub of survival level consciousness of 3D was only ever meant to be an initiation portal of experience, allowing you to explore the polarity and duality of the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual consequences of being human, and that those timelines of polarity and the polarity exploration, that they've now culminated, they've completed, you're done. That constantly reflecting, stagnated set of ideas, belief systems, levels of consciousness, opinions, beliefs, attitudes, even our imagination, where that just keeps reflecting back the same holographic vortex of reality over and over again. What if we've learned everything that we've needed to from being inside that fixed reality? And what if everything about moving through this timeline of planetary ascension is really offering us an exit point of transit to the next level of our ascension into elevated consciousness? But what if that's completely dependent upon waking up from this holographic reality bubble of 3D consciousness, where you're just clocking physical time, you're in your routine, you're habituated to this holographic vortex so much that you think that this is all there is? What if the emotional intensity you are experiencing as you undergo massive transformation on a personal level as we go through this planetary ascension timeline is perpetuated and magnified by the continued fragmentation you experience by participating in the reality bubble of 3D space-time, and the resulting feeling being that you are always healing but never healed? You're always going through a process of healing something, unlearning something, unbecoming, as in the process is ongoing but never complete. It is because this hub of reality holds frequencies of blame, resentment, anger, fear. Sorry, I lost my place. Blame, resentment, anger, fear, anxiety, doubt, mistrust of self, and hesitation that holographically reflect, project, and anchor into mass consciousness over and over and over again. Outside of this reality vortex of 3D time-space, the vibrations that I just mentioned, they're not supported. The fear, the anger, the anxiety, the doubt, the mistrust of self, the hesitation, the constant feeling like you have to hedge your bets. You can't fully jump and believe there's a net to catch you. Outside of this reality vortex of 3D time-space, the vibrations I mentioned of that doubt, mistrust of self, etc., they're not supported. In the greater galactic time grid, the universal time matrix, you can call it, you are free of frequency boundaries and limitation. There is no limitation there. You are truly free to be all you can be. And this exit point of transit that I mentioned to this level of consciousness is awaiting your sovereign choice of opting out of the limit or of the initiation portal, let's just say, of 3D time. And the fundamental changes in beliefs, ideas, attitudes, behaviors, and the new solutions to old challenges that you've been looking for so long are found outside of this lower hub of consciousness that's confined to 3D time-space reality. The ascending hubs, let's just call them, of frequency grids, of time frequency grids that exist outside of 3D time. These are all accelerating. More and more of these time frequency grids, meaning different and more preferable ways of being, are becoming so. If only you would place your attention on them, if only you would observe them, if only you would learn how to merge them into your reality, jump into them. They're offering you your exit point now, the ability to play with psychological time. This is accelerating in 2020 and beyond. You're going to hear a lot more people talking about timelines. It's going to start to come on your radar so much more, where you're going to be hearing people talking about time and timelines, asking questions about jumping timelines, collapsing timelines. You're going to start seeing more shows, more television programs, more movies about jumping time, changing time, time travel, moving through time, going way far ahead in time, collapsing timelines, searching for the highest and best timelines. This is already in the holographic projection in dimensions beyond the 3D time-space matrix, and are starting to reflect from those outer dimensional realities into this one. But a lot of people who are stuck in the rigid confines and having all their attitudes, beliefs, opinions, etc. aligned with the rigidity and the fixed nature of this 3D time-space matrix will not be privy to this information coming in. They'll literally have this veil that can't be parted because they don't want to believe in anything outside the rigid confines of 3D time-space. It makes them anxious and nervous to think about moving into a place of reality that isn't known. And sadly, there's going to be a lot of people left behind on this journey because they simply don't want to opt into elevated consciousness. It's always a choice. Yes, the planet is ascending. Yes, we are all a very integral part of Mother Earth's ascension process. Being humans, we are tied to the electromagnetic energy, to the Earth, and through our DNA. And so we feel this planetary ascension one way or another. Some people will call it chaotic. Some people will call it a beautiful revelation. We're all experiencing this on our own unique timeline, based on our own individuated consciousness, I should say. But some will be left behind on this ascension process because they're not choosing to opt in on elevating their consciousness. And that includes elevating your consciousness to meet the ascension of constructs, like the very construct of time. Your ideas about it are maybe a little antiquated and can use an upgrade, can use an upshot. please know that you can learn how to collapse, merge, stream, bend, jump, opt out of false time. And when you do that, not only are you achieving mastery over your domain of self, over your individuated thread of consciousness, you are also receiving upshots in synchronicity, serendipity. You're transmuting your interpersonal relationship, meaning the one you are having with yourself is going to get better. You can change the nature of all of your personal relationships with people, places, your outer environment. When you learn how to move or shift your awareness into your higher self avatar and play with the psychological aspect or construct of time, you can also rapidly accelerate completion cycles of certain dramas, traumas, karma, polarity, duality that you keep moving through over and over on this like closed burrito loop of experience here in the 3D time-space matrix. Timelines that hold challenges to your health, your wealth, your general well-being that you've been coping with for months or years or even decades can and do collapse in hours or even days or weeks when you learn how to play with the fabric of time, when you learn how to impact the physical time-space matrix by playing with psychological time. You also fine-tune your cellular knowing through activating dormant DNA. DNA and time are very, very closely linked. You activate dormant DNA that has existed ethereally outside of the 3D reality vortex, and you increase your natural gifts and sensory perception beyond the 5 senses. When you enter the cosmic data stream of the galactic time grid, you start working with time outside of 3D time. You blow your perception wide open, and you bring yourself to witness all levels of your experience from your galactic self, from the vantage point of the eternal now, which encompasses everything. It is that vertical continuum of time that is unending. And you see where you can be more in divine service to the infinite, an unbounded incarnation of you, and to the cosmic sovereign, one all. And this is truly timeline healing and time bending, and it is a fascinating and wonderful and profound thing to learn. It truly is advanced spiritual healing and a way to gain mastery over self, to transcend the ego in this lifetime in a way where you really do find this beautiful alchemy of being peaceful and empowered and free. So I hope this has been instructional as well as informative and even fun to hear. And I hope that it has challenged your ideas about time in, well, hopefully a really good way. And I want to thank you for listening.